young? Or am I faking on the tip of my tongue? There's a sarcasm waiting for you. I'm willing to trade my soul for a bit of your charm. There's no way I fade into oblivion, 'cause I'll keep shining over you all. And if your wings entwining, you better face the fall, keep trying again. Oh yeah, keep trying again. There's mud on the floor, desperate people trying to get through the door, although the room's already crowded. But I'll keep shining over you all. And if your wings entwining, you better face the fall, keep trying again. Oh yeah, keep trying again. Zeros, everybody's trying to be heroes when all they have to say to be okay is I don't know. And keep trying again. I'll keep shining over you all. With your wings entwining, you better face the fall. Zero, everybody's trying to be heroes when all they have to say to be okay is I don't know. Are you okay? I'm not that sure.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We welcome you here to race number 7 of season 52 of the Rolling Thunder Gaming Talladega Challenge Series. We're getting ready to go racing here tonight for another 66 laps at the high banks of Talladega. And if you're just joining us here at this point of the season, you may not realize it, but we're getting down to the nitty-gritty in the regular season to determine those drivers who are going to battle for the championship. After tonight, only 2 races will remain until we'll find out those drivers that are going to be championship competitors. I'm Seth Cole alongside of Zach Freemouse. So, Zach, the pressure is on for these drivers here tonight, and another big field. So, I think we could safely say we're going to see some pretty aggressive racing. However, last week, they did a pretty good job of keeping it clean. Do the same thing here tonight as we draw closer to the end of the regular season?
I don't know, Seth. I think that's a pretty good question. As you mentioned, race number 6, 3 races to go in the regular season until we reach the playoffs. And interestingly enough, throughout the first 6 weeks of the season, we have had 6 different individual winners, as opposed to last season, where when we got to the end of the regular season, most of those spots were occupied by multiple time winners across the season. So what that sets up for us is an opportunity for a couple guys to make it in on points, Seth. Now, we know anybody below anybody below 10th in that 11th to 20th range that has a victory is going to be automatically locked into the grid. However, your top 10 is locked in regardless. So if we continue this trend of new winners, that's easily going to leave 1 point position open. However, maybe a couple other guys thinking, hey, if one of these guys goes up and gets a repeat win, that opens up another spot in points. So I think there's a lot of mentalities going into tonight's race, Seth. But as you mentioned, another big field, 35 cars to take the green tonight. Points are going to be at a premium, as we've seen in the past. A big one, if you come into the 5th through 10th spot in points where you're not so secure at the top of the board and you take a big loss in points by taking a 30th to 35th place finish, that's about a 30-point swing. And a lot of guys going to be trying to avoid that here.
Now, obviously, as you mentioned, the way that the playoff grid is going to be done, the drivers in the top 10, the drivers that are inside the top 20 with wins. But how about a driver that doesn't fit either of those bills? How about a driver that comes into this race 25th in the point standings? What is he thinking with 3 races remaining? We're going to find out as we're going to talk here tonight for our pre-race interview. The driver of the number 143 Dodge, and that is Bob Dixon. And actually, as I'm looking here, we may not have Bob Dixon in the field here tonight. Double checking. Oh, we actually might not have him for our pre-race interview. I'll double check again. And no, we do not have him here tonight. All right, so we do not have a pre-race interview driver here tonight. So I guess we'll instead go to our starting lineup for tonight's event. And Bob Seminara. Remember last year it was Joe DeSpirito winning every pole in sight, and a couple of times Bob Seminara was able to snipe a pole position away from him, but he's actually been quite a competitor for that inside of the front row this season. 3rd pole on the year for the 712 and 2nd in a row.
Absolutely. Bob's been setting some pretty fast lap times out here in qualifying. Joe DeSpirito, however, still leading the season with pole positions. He's got 4, but unlike last season where we saw Joe DeSpirito at the top of the field almost the entire season and playoffs long, Bob's decided he's going to change that up a little bit. So he's going to have Joe DeSpirito starting alongside him in that 2nd spot. And 3rd, we're going to have Grant Wesley and Dante Ricky starting on the outside of your 2nd row. 5th and 6th will be Donnie Garrett, Chuck McClure, respectively. Rounding out your top 10 will be Mark Paglia, Bernie Mobbs, Josh Metallic, David Cannon. 11th through 15th is going to look like Rodney Sullins, Jeremy Jeffries, Tim Knobsker, Billy Ellisor, and Jeff Cravello. And John Fergione, we have him starting 16th with Dave Melson in 17th position. 18th position, we'll see Tony Tallman go off on the grid with 19 of Glenn Harris, or the 08 rather, in 19th. I apologize. Chris Elliott, Richard Martin going to round out row number 11. Richard Martin starting on position number 21. Terry Bombard, Jim Black, Mike Rogers, Chris Emery rounding out through the top 25 of your field. Then we have Jerm Lewis, Doug Woolley, Gary Hurst, John Godfrey, Ken Roberts, Andy All, Wiley Coate, Hank Middleton going off from the very back of the pack with Cy Jones and Wayne Pribnow behind him. So Seth, I'm not so great at these starting lineups. This is why I usually leave that to you, but don't let my flubs fool you, because what we're about to see here is going to be a great race. We've seen it week in and week out, and I think, what are you thinking? You think we're going to get one of those long green flag runs, or do you think we'll really have them bunched up most of the night like we've seen the last few weeks?
There's been a couple of times in the last 3 weeks where I've thought that they're going to wreck. They've been 3 wide, several rows deep, 4 wide on occasion. They found ways to make it work and keep it clean, so they've done pretty well last couple of weeks of getting to that first round of green flag pit stops. I think they might be able to do it again here tonight. We know that all bets are off when we end up getting to that final stage of the race, but we'll see how aggressive these drivers are, because some of these guys, they're already comfortably locked into the playoffs. Other drivers, they may be already in desperation mode.
Absolutely. So we see these guys, they're going to file off 2 by 2 by 2 by 2 all through turns 1 and 2. It looks like the inside line, Bob Seminara, Grant Wesley, they're going to have the advantage off of 2 down the back straightaway. It looks like they're going to stay in that line. I expected maybe Bob Seminara might move up in front of his teammate in the number 24 of Joe DeSpirito, but so far off into turn number 3, it's Bob Seminara leading the pack.
Now, We got some new faces and new places here tonight as well. That 54, as you talked about in the starting lineup, that is not Robbie Nices, that is Dante Ricky filling into that machine. We're used to seeing him out there in the bright-colored number 84 Subway car. So, Dante's had a very slow start to this year as well. Currently doesn't have himself up in a playoff position. This was a guy that had 2 regular season wins last year. I mean, obviously maybe swapping it up a little bit, trying to get a little bit better mojo perhaps, moving over to a different manufacturer and a different number.
Well, absolutely. We've seen Robbie Nice has been giving this car a pretty good ride so far throughout this season, and Dante Ricky a pretty good wheelman as well. I know we're used to seeing Dante start toward the back of the pack, but tonight got himself a good starting spot, and he's pushed Joe DeSpirito out to the lead heading off into turn number 3.
Definitely has. Chuck McClure right there as well with Donnie Garrett. They'll be side by side for third. The Dodgers trying to work the third lane with Bernie Mobbs and Dave Cannon. Bernie Mobbs, another driver that we would expect to see up inside of a playoff position, and right now he is just on the precipice of inside the playoffs. Came into this race tied for 10th place with the 2 of Hank Middleton.
Yeah, I don't think Bernie's quite had the season that he was hoping to have. Remember last season, he ran up front pretty consistently with his teammates Bob Seminaire and Joe DeSpirito, but this season has just had a lot of bad luck. He's had some internet connection issues, sent him to the back a couple times, been caught up in a couple big wrecks, and, right now it's sort of played havoc on his season, but we know he is capable of getting up there and getting a win, as we see him right now on the lead of the third row on the outside. Behind him, he's got David Cannon and the 26 of Billy Elliser.
On that inside line now, it's going to be Donnie Garrett, Mark Paglia, and Josh Metallic trying to get something going. Of course, Metallic winning the season opener, so he was the one that had the stress-free feeling at the earliest point of the season, knowing he'd be in the playoffs. Tim Knobsker right behind him in the 088, and the thing about Tim Knobsker is he kind of fit the same category as Jeremy Jeffries last season, where both of them came in around the midway portion of the regular season, and while they both found victory lane, they weren't high enough in the point to get a playoff spot. Well, with Jeffries winning last week, he's locked into the playoffs, and I wouldn't be surprised here in these final 3 races to see Knobsker do the same.
Absolutely. We know Knobsker's capable of doing so. He had a win stripped away from him earlier in the season due to a last lap incident that occurred off of turn number 4. But he's one of those guys that we know he can go up there and contend. Now, interestingly enough, you did mention, Seth, the 39 of Josh Metallic. He was one of those guys, as you mentioned, he won the first race of the season, effectively locking him into the playoffs. Now, had it not been for that victory, currently Josh Metallic is one of those guys with a victory outside of the top 10. So at this point, he's not pointing his way into the playoffs so far right now, Seth. At this point, it's going to be that win that's got him in there. So, we got trouble.
Paglia got turned off the nose of Josh Metallic. He collects up for Joyne in the 92. Several other drivers involved. I see Chris Elliott, Glenn Harris. There's Wayne Primnow getting a piece. Ken Roberts. The whole back straightaway is littered with race cars from the outside to the inside wall.
I see Jerem Lewis driving away from that. I see Chris Emery, Wiley Coate. As you mentioned, Wade Pribnow. There's Tim Knobsker, his machine damaged. I saw David Cannon. He took a pretty wild spin toward the inside of the racetrack. Not sure if he's gotten his car fired back off again, but one of those incidents like we saw last week, Seth, where the car that wrecked was sent up the racetrack, sending others down, and effectively just blocked the entire back straightaway about the midway down the Talladega super stretch there.
You almost kind of saw that wreck generating where the 28 and the 39 just could not seem to get the back and front bumpers lined up on that inside line off of turn 2. Hence where the contact took place, and unfortunately, the fact that 28 got hooked to the right back up into traffic into that outside line, and everybody scattering to avoid. Looks like the David Cannon machine was not able to get the car refired. He's out of the race, and Mark Paglia out of the race as well. Gonna be honest, Mark Paglia was one of the dark horse drivers I had coming into this one, just based on the fact that he actually won a special event at Daytona last Saturday, and I thought, man, this guy's got a lot of momentum, super speedway momentum coming tonight, but an early end to his evening here, along with Dave Cannon, who was a runner-up finisher 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, a lot of bad luck for those guys. Paglia, one of those drivers, if you remember last season, that was able to effectively point his way into the playoffs. before he was eliminated. But tonight, it doesn't seem like it's going to be his night. He came into the race tonight 33rd position in points, 154 out of the point lead. And with this early exit tonight, Seth, I think that's probably going to be about his season for sure right there.
Jeff Cravello was also collected up in that. The 914 of Gary Hurst making his debut tonight. Tim Knobsker, you already touched on, got a little piece of it as well. Dave Melson in the 038 was involved, and a couple of cars actually caught some pretty good air as well here. We'll focus on the 92 of John Fergione, filling in for Bobby Farrell this evening as he's going to get up into the air. Metallic actually had the whole rear end housing of his car lift off the ground. And
yeah, Sonny Tallman, he spun in there with a lot of force. He took a hard hit in the middle of that as well.
Wiley Coate, that's Terry Bombard right there in the 10. Richard Martin and Jim Black, they all got bits and pieces of this as well. So it's early to say, but we very well may have already seen the big one strike in this race as early as lap 5.
And that was my mistake. That was actually the 055 of Ken Roberts. We do have 255 machines out there on the track tonight. But Seth, a big incident involving quite a few cars. Now, this was something that we kind of talked about at the top of the broadcast with the size of the starting fields. If you're one of these front runners or one of these guys that's trying to make points up in the last 3 races here to get into the playoffs, not a position that you want to be put in. So I think there's probably going to be a lot of really disappointed drivers, especially considering this happening so early on the race here tonight.
Right now, just looking at that critical 10th position in points, couple of drivers that were up above that cut line, like Jeff Cravello, 8th in the standings, got a piece of that incident. We'll have to see if he's still up to speed, but you look just down below. 12th in points, Tim Knobsker, Chris Elliott, 16th, Richard Martin, 17th, Dave Melson, and 18th. These are drivers that were relying on a good run here tonight to, if not already move themselves up into the top 10, at least be within striking distance in the final 2 races of the season. Not the way they wanted this to start off, because now they kind of put themselves behind the 8 ball early tonight and have to try and figure out if they have a damaged race car or not. If they do have a damaged race car, then it's the hope that this is going to turn to a race of atrocity to maybe be able to pick up positions and obviously points.
Well, something kind of interesting, if you think back to last week's race, Seth, in the 23rd position, as you mentioned, Tim Knobsker, who, like you said, came into tonight 12th in points after having a win stripped away from him earlier in the season. Last week, he was involved in a pretty substantial wreck as well, but through patience and perseverance was able to work that draft and work his way up to that 3rd place finish. So I think there's a lot of guys, as we've seen in multiple instances here throughout the last couple seasons, depending on exactly how bad the damage is on your car, that may not necessarily spell out the end of your day. It might just play a little bit of havoc coming down to the closing laps trying to race for the lead.
So we are less than 10 laps in already. 2 drivers have called it an early evening at Talladega. Mark Paglia in 33rd. And to your point, pretty much that is his hopes of making it into the playoffs done. As he missed the first, I believe it was 3 races of the season, obviously due to personal things that were going on. David Cannon, tough break for him. He's been on quite a hot streak as of late. A runner-up finish 2 weeks ago and had a solid outing last week as well. It actually worked his way up in his limited number of starts this year to the 24th position in points and was actually within striking distance to, at least tonight, move into the top 20. And who knows if that 003 could have gone to victory lane, could have been one of those playoff contenders. So tough break for both of those drivers. I'm not necessarily certain, because obviously we don't know where everybody else is going to finish, but that could be playoff hopes over for David Cannon as well.
Absolutely. And it's just like we keep talking about with these ginormous fields that we have here, which is a good thing, you know, when we speak of it and how it can potentially negative affect your points at the end of the day. It's still a good problem to have, because, you know, you could also be a beneficiary of somebody else having a bad day. So like we mentioned all these guys who could be in big trouble because of this incident, and that also opens up the door now for some other guys to, you know, potentially capitalize that if they can make a really good run at the end of this race.
A couple of drivers that we know are not in the field here tonight, and a couple of them could have easily had themselves, possibly with a good run tonight, into contention to battle for a playoff position. We've already talked about the fact that Bob Dixon isn't in the field here tonight. He was going to be the driver we were going to interview pre-race, came into this race 25th in the standings. Obviously, Bobby Farrell not in the field here tonight with John Fagioni filling in his number 92. Bobby Farrell came into this race 15th in points, a driver that easily tonight, even with a top 5, top 10 run, could have found himself up inside the top 10 in the standings, so we'll have to see how far he falls with 2 races remaining. Jessica Shelton, who was in the Final Four last season, not in the field here tonight. I actually talked with Jess pre-race, and she's just taking a personal break here tonight. We'll probably see her back in the car next week, and I just found out Dante Ricky doing the fill-in honors of the number 54 tonight for Robbie Nisus. Robbie just had reconstructive surgery on his left hand, and so he's out this week, possibly next week as well. He said they actually had surgery done last summer as well, and he was out 3 months, so it might be a little bit of time before we see Robbie Nisus back behind the wheel of the number 54, so obviously we wish him a speedy recovery and hope to see him back here soon.
Absolutely. And, that's kind of a shame, Seth, because like I said earlier, Robbie had been putting together some really, really good runs so far this season. And it was really showing a lot of the effort that he'd been putting in and running up there at the front with a lot of these competitors and, just showing that he could be somebody to, really be in contention for victories at the end of these super speedway races. So again, we wish him well, but of course with that surgery on the left hand, kind of hard to drive. Seth, I'm not sure about you, but typically the left is the one that I drive with the right, generally on the shifter. So when you take that left hand out of the equation, that definitely makes it a little more difficult to wheel these cars around the racetrack.
So far, Dante giving that 54 a good run. Going to line up 3rd place behind Bob Seminara and Chuck McClure. Dante will be 3rd with Joe DeSpirito. Grant Wesley there in 5th. 6th, Rodney Sullins. Then it'll be Donnie Garrett, Bernie Mobbs, Billy Elliser, and Sonny Tallman completing the top 10. And here tonight, at least, I'll be disappointed if Dante Ricky doesn't stay out and lead a lap under caution, because that just seems to be an MO for Robbie Nisus. But nonetheless, we are now getting ready to put the 10th lap onto the board. We have worked our first caution of the night. Let's see if this kind of maybe scares some sense into these drivers and we get into a bit of a long green flag run.
We'll have to see what happens. Right now, Dante Ricky and Grant Wesley all over the back panel of the 712 of Bob Seminara. Chuck McClure, as you mentioned, he is leading that middle line with help from Joe DeSpirito off of turn number 2. Seminara is going to drift up the track, but nobody's going to go with Seminara. It looks like now Chuck McClure stuck on the outside with the 54 of Ricky on the inside, heading off into turn 3. They're 3 wide.
3 wide, 2 rows deep there, as you've got the 54 on the bottom, 712 in the middle, 17 up on the top side, and 2 of those drivers already have a win. Dante Ricky does not. He's now going to get pushed to the front, courtesy of Grant Wesley. They're 3 wide behind them. How about the 26 of Billy Elliser, who we saw go to victory lane earlier on this season? I've seen a lot of our former winners up here inside of the top 10.
Absolutely. Well, it's no surprise that a lot of our top contenders in points are guys that are typically up at the top of the charts on race day. That's exactly how you get there. I know, as dumb as it sounds, it really can be that simple. We saw Joe DeSpirito and Bob Seminara do it all last season, just qualify up front, run up front all the time. And when you can be that consistent and try to stay out of trouble, it can mean a lot for your points. But right now, Seminara still the leader in that middle line. Ricky trying really hard to make a run at that middle line on the inside. He's alongside Donnie Garrett coming off of turn number 4.
The line that did not move was that outside line, the extreme outside line, as Chuck McClure and Rodney Sullins tried to get something going, and they have now faded back to around the 7th and 9th positions respectively, 3 wide behind them. That's where you find Chris Emery stuck in the middle, Hank Middleton down on the inside line, Knobsker on the top, and keep an eye on that 2 car. He's had some good runs the last couple of weeks, and Hank comes into this race tied for 10th in the point standings. It's been a while since we've seen Hank Middleton run a full-time schedule, and he's been pretty good so far this year.
He's been really good getting, back used to and back into the swing of things here. He's been putting up some really consistent numbers. Bernie Mobbs in the number 90 car got some warp issue. This is one of those things that we talked about with the 90 car earlier, Seth. This has hurt his season a lot this year. I guess it's, you could kind of put it right up there with, if a team in the real NASCAR world was dealing with a sort of motor gremlins or anything like that they deal with on a weekly basis and they just can't seem to shake it. That's that sort of bad luck Bernie Mobbs is caught with those internet issues right now.
Yeah, Bernie Mobbs made his way into the playoffs last season with a victory, but to your point, 7 races into this season, 6 races, and then we include tonight's event, and he finds himself 10th in the point stands, a far cry from where the 90 was running even points-wise last year.
Absolutely. But as you were mentioning, yes, the number 2 of Hank Middleton, he is no stranger to these super speedways series. He's taken a couple seasons off, but it's good to see him back out there again. Not surprised to see him battling for the top 10 in points. We know he's more than a capable driver. If anything, Seth, I think I'm a little bit more surprised that we haven't seen him in victory lane quite yet.
Yeah, he was close. He was the one that actually pushed Chuck McClure to victory lane a few weeks ago. Finished 3rd in that race, if I recall correctly. So Hank Middleton definitely is someone that can be up there at the front in the closing stages of this race, and so far he's been able to keep his nose clean here in the first 14 laps. A couple of drivers that look like they may have sustained a little bit more damage than they would have liked. The 92 of John Fagioni kind of running towards the back for a majority of this run. He was involved in the incident back on lap 5, and so too was Jim Black in the 86. I thought for a brief moment that Jim might actually lose the draft, but they were racing 3 wide ahead of him. He was able to draft back up to him. So for now, all of the 32 drivers that are still in this race are up in this lead pack.
Speaking of 3 wide, Seth, coming out of the tri-oval, the number 222 of Chris Emery is working that bottom line pretty well with help from the 2 of Middleton and the 10 of Terry Bombard. You now see it looks like the Dante Ricky machine going to move down in front of them as he sees them coming and making progress. That's now going to be 2 by 2, almost 3 wide in the middle of the backstretch as they work up on the 616 of Jerm Lewis into turn number 3.
You look at the points coming into tonight's event and you kind of pick out drivers that might be able to lock themselves up playoff spots even as early as next week, depending on what the gap is between themselves and 10th in the points. And 2 drivers that I look at, that 222 of Chris Emery and the 616 of Jerm Lewis. These are 2 drivers that are teammates. They work together every single week, and they have been really strong this season. Emery 7th in points, Jerm Lewis 9th in the standings, and it just kind of makes me wonder if they make it into the playoffs. I mean, there's a couple of names that we did not see as playoff contenders last season that could very much be threats for guys we're used to seeing be in the championship hunt, like Jaspirito and Seminary, Grant Wesley, and others.
Absolutely. I wouldn't be at all surprised to see that. And as we've mentioned, there is a minimum of 1 point position open. So if we do end up having a multiple time winner or not, regardless, there is somebody that's going to make it in on points and not with a win. So it'll be interesting to see exactly how that plays out. As you mentioned, the 616, 222 been working that bottom line masterfully the last couple weeks, and we see the 222 down in it again right at the front of the field right now. It's about a 4-car breakaway single pile before you get to your first side-by-side between the 17 of McClure and the 616 of Jerm Lewis. McClure is still not quite able to get anything going on that middle line. It's still now fade down behind that 616 coming off of turn number 2.
We've got so many storylines in these final 3 races of the regular season to follow in terms of the playoffs. Obviously, drivers that are trying to win and stay in the top 20 in points, drivers that are trying to point their way into the top 10. But another battle we have to keep an eye on as well is the battle for the regular season championship. The points leader when the checkered flag is taken at the conclusion of race 9. That's awfully close right now between about 5-6 drivers. Grant Wesley currently leads the point standings, 6 points over Joe DeSpirito. Jeremy Jeffries, with his win last week, now jumps up into the hunt, 16 points back in 3rd, along with Chuck McClure, who's tied with him. Donnie Garrett, 5th in points, is 19 points back, and you got Bob Seminara right there as well, 24 points back. And while that might seem like a huge margin, you got to remember we've got 30 to 35 car fields every single week, so that's a maximum of 35 points that you could gain on a driver in the course of one race.
It's also a maximum of 30 to 35 points that you could lose throughout the course of one race if you're not careful. And there's been a couple pretty close incidents over the last lap and a half. You see the 88 of Grant Wesley. He won a couple times last year. So far hasn't been able to do so this season. He's falling toward the back. He shot completely down across the racetrack from the high middle line to the extreme bottom line about a lap and a half ago. I thought he almost lost the rear end of the car, but he was able to gather it back up, and now he's fallen to the back. So I'm not sure if he's having some sort of mechanical issue or if there's something else going on there, but not making any forward progress, that's for sure.
Grant's been the most consistent driver so far this season in the first 6 races, an average finish of just about 7th place, and as we said, leads the point standings, but victory lane so far has eluded that number 88 machine, a 3-time winner from last year, as looks like we may have a second lane forming again. Now Chuck McClure sticks his nose out to the right rear quarter panel of Sonny Tallman. He's got Rodney Sullins and Tim Knobsker willing to go with him if he wants to make that charge. Got a little bit congested there off of turn 4.
And remember what we mentioned last week, Seth. When you are that car that's stuck in the middle, the 55 of Tallman, he's really got to be on the defensive right now. We saw both the 616 of Jerem Lewis and the 88 of Wesley get stuck in that middle line and go all the way to the back of the pack. And just as I mentioned that right now, you see Tallman, he is losing the 77's rear end as he's sucked between those two cars. Oh, we got big trouble.
Chris Emery up and over on the back straightaway, up on top of the hood of Bernie Mobbs. Grant Wesley back there is spinning, and I believe we got a car flipping. That's the 222 of Emery. Looks like he may have grip flipped on the back straightaway. Saw another car that spun. I think that was Knobsker. He's along with Ken Roberts.
Absolutely. Lap number 20, the same exact spot that we saw our incident take place on lap number 4. It looked almost identical, Seth. One car spinning up the track, one car spinning down. The 222 of Chris Emery, he got airborne immediately as the air went underneath the rear end of that car. He came back down, landed, and then flipped 4 or 5 more times, barrel rolling before coming to a stop. It looks like the window net on that car is currently down. We'll have to see if he will be able to get that refired or not, but big incident. Again, lap number 20 here on the backstretch at Talladega.
And very much contributed to the fact, much like our first caution, just a lot of movement there on the back straightaway. I think that was McClure that was leading the outside line. He got awfully squirrely, and the cars behind him were trying to figure out where he was going, moving left and right, trying to follow the back bumper of the car in front of them, and I think that's what led to the contact. I think it was Knobsker that might have gotten into the back of Rodney Sullins, who was behind Chuck McClure. So a lot of chain reaction bumping going on there, and just one uneven bump is what triggered that wreck.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and like we said, it looked almost identical to the wreck earlier, with the exception of the 38 going up into the wall. It makes you wonder if maybe a little bit of bumper grab, a little bit of, a couple of the cars behind the 88, didn't get the memo that there was such a checkup in front of them and there was just nowhere for anybody to go. Another multi-car incident here at Talladega. So, Seth, with every one of these big wrecks that happens, it's another opportunity for somebody else to take, a little bit of vested interest in, hey, there might now be a couple more cars out, and they're looking at their points. They're doing mental math. We've talked to a couple drivers in pre and post race interviews. We know these guys are doing math out there in the middle of the race on the racetrack. So that makes you wonder who's looking to take advantage of this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with drivers that we're seeing getting involved in these incidents, they're drivers that are around that cut line, and it gives life to drivers that may have been mired down 20th through 25th in points to say, hey, I may still have a shot. There's still this race to go, still 2 more races still to come. And that, again, is all attributed back to the unpredictability of Talladega Superspeedway. I mean, what looks like is going to be an impossible feat one lap, all of a sudden, well, you got a shot there the following lap, depending on who of your competitors may be involved in a wreck and you able to get through it. And there were a couple of other drivers that took some shots there in that incident. When we look back at the replay, Hank Middleton got collected up, and he slammed the right side of his car into the inside wall. Grant Wesley was collected up as he got run into from behind by Ken Roberts, and then we saw Grant Wesley sliding in, and he actually hit Bernie Mobbs in the 90 car. And again, with moderate damage and the hits that we see taken here to certain areas of the race car, we have to wait till these cars are completely up to speed to know if that's going to affect them aero damage wise or not. But we've seen some pretty big pretty big names involved in the two first incidents of the night.
Absolutely. I mean, Seth, if you look right now at our point standings, you go from 9th all the way down to 15th. At the very minimum, every one of those drivers has been involved in some sort of incident on the racetrack. Now, what makes that the most interesting thing so far is, as we mentioned, if we continue getting new winners that are already within the top 10, that's only going to leave the 9th and 10th points positions open for guys to point their way into this playoff here at the end of the regular season. So every time one of these things happens, it's another one of these guys. So it kind of makes you wonder, what are we going to see? What sort of a point swing will we see by the end of the day?
Well, I want to cast your memory back to last year's regular season finale when we saw Billy Elliser point his way in with a damaged race car. I mean, for all those drivers you mentioned down there around the cut line area, all getting bits and pieces of our two wrecks here today, I think you're in the situation now, not only in this race, but in the upcoming 2 weeks. If that thing's still running, doesn't matter if it's up to speed or not. You get it back out there on the racetrack. You log laps. You hope that maybe another wreck's going to happen, and you pick up points and positions, because that's exactly what happened for a wrecked race car of Billy Elliser last season in his ability to be able to point his way into the playoffs.
Absolutely. And interestingly enough, Seth, the car that we saw airborne land on the hood of the number 90 of Bernie Mobbs and then barrel roll 4 or 5 times, the 222 of Chris Emery came into tonight's race in 7th position. He did exactly that, Seth. He had his crew work on his car. He is now currently being scored 1 lap down, but he's back out on the racetrack again. He's looking to still make up some sort of points, as many as he can. There's a lot of laps left in this race so far, and if we keep having big incidents like these first 2 that we've seen, he very, very potentially stands to gain even more points still.
Yeah, 12 points ahead of the cut line coming into tonight's event. Now, he is going to be trapped 1 lap down, but if we end up getting a caution, he's not involved, he would get the lucky dog, and then he could begin picking up spots if other drivers run into incidents here, as we are about a third of the way through tonight's event. Working our second caution of the evening. 32 drivers are still running, 31 of them on the lead lap. Bob Seminara is the leader. Joe DeSpirito in seconds. Looks like we're going to have another lap of caution here. Donnie Garrett will be third, with Chuck McClure in fourth, Sonny Tallman fifth, Rodney Sullins in sixth, Dante Ricky, Wiley Coate, Terry Bombard, and John Godfrey going to complete the top 10. And we talked about the pressure is on now from this point of the regular season till the regular season finale in 2 weeks' time. And I look at some of these names that are up here. Donnie Garrett right now looks like he might be a shoe-in to point his way in, but we know he wants to go to victory lane. Sonny Tallman up here in the 55, Rodney Sullins in the 38, Wiley Coate, Dante Ricky, even John Godfrey, who won last year's overall finale, the season finale, in the final race of the season. I mean, these are names that could easily put themselves up as contenders for a championship if they're able to win here tonight.
Well, and they're all more than capable of doing it. We see every week the battle of attrition that takes place from the front, or it's from the beginning to the end of the race. And all these guys, we see them run up front consistently. And, you know, every one of these big incidents that happens are incidents that they're not involved with, that traditionally they have been. And let's be honest about it, Seth. We've seen these guys run well enough to know that a lot of the reasons that they don't finish up front consistently are these big super speedway races. And once you have, you know, that damage that you have to overcome, or you've got those couple DNFs that you have to overcome, it gets really, really hard to fight back. So like you said, this is these guys' opportunity to shine. They have a very real possibility to get out here and get one of these victories. Sitting in the 11th or 20th spots and points, they could find themselves in the playoffs. You know they'd like to do it, because if they can get one win, that's motivation to go out there and get more. And we've heard that before from other drivers as well.
Well, so far here tonight, we've been yet to see these drivers make a green flag pit stop, as the caution has eluded these drivers twice in the first 24 laps, getting ready to put them back under the green flag. And a couple of drivers that we were kind of wondering, would they be up to speed, getting involved in the incident back on lap 5. One that obviously is up to speed and restarting in that 9th position is Terry Bombard. Now, he comes into this race currently 34th in the points. He was actually below Mark Paglia, who made an early exit in the standings. So I'm not necessarily certain that even if he won here tonight, if he could point his way into the top 20, but that's certainly not going to stop him from trying to put that machine in victory lane.
Absolutely. So, Seth, we look at the list of winners that we have so far this season. We know that we have 6 different winners through 6 races. So I think it was week number 4-ish that you and I actually talked about during the broadcast, actually, where, hey, do you think it's a possibility that we make it to the end of the season with as many different winners as we have races throughout the regular season? And I think, if I remember correctly, I didn't think that it would happen. And I'm pretty sure you're the one that was like, no, I'm pretty sure this could happen. So it's a very real possibility at this point. So you look at the front 3. You've got Bob Seminara, the 24 of Joe DeSpirito, the 77 of Donnie Garrett. Of those top 3 drivers, we know the 712 and the 24 have wins. We know how badly the 77 wants to win. The 17 car, he's also got to win. And all these guys on back, it's just a testament to how competitive this series is and how good all of these drivers are, because realistically, any one of these drivers can come out here on any given week and sneak one of these victories away. And, it's a testament to the series, Seth, because it's
caution. Got something happened in the back here, it looked like. Oh, it's a big wreck over in turn 2. Bernie Mobbs, Ken Roberts, Grant Wesley's all torn up. Jim Black, Hurst in the 914. Tim Knobsker is smoking out of turn 2. I think that might have been Hank Middleton I saw down there on the apron off that exit as well. Ty Jones in the 7 also collected a lot of smoke underneath the Sunoco Chevrolet.
The 088 of Knobsker smoking very badly as well.
This happened out of the line of sight of our camera. It must have happened towards the mid-pack area. We'll see if we can find out exactly what happened, but there were some hard hits obviously taken in this one, and it included our points leader, Grant Wesley. Like it might be happening around the 90 of Bernie Mobbs area. He was in the middle 3 wide with John Fagiorni on the bottom. Oh, they just wadded up and they almost were 4 wide.
Yeah, I count a minimum of 10 cars in that wreck. Tim Knobsker, with as bad as that car is smoking, very likely done for the day. Hank Middleton, who came into tonight's race 10th in points, as well as the other guy who came in 10th in points, Bernie Mobbs. They both badly affected. It looks like Middleton has parked it. Another big shakeup. Something that we did. I definitely didn't expect this stuff. Not another big wreck this soon after the first 2. So it's just shakeup after shakeup here.
This is the kind of thing you would definitely expect to see in the regular season finale. We know that desperation is set in for some drivers, but not all drivers. And to your point, very surprised that we've had 3 really big incidents actually here in the first 25 laps of this race. And you saw there Grant Wesley in the 88. He was able to keep his car going, but a lot of damage sustained to him. Another driver that we didn't document that I saw actually was involved, flipped upside down, was Andrew All, making his second start of the season. And looks like he has taken his car to the garage area along with the aforementioned 2 of Hank Middleton.
That's going to hurt Middleton for sure. As we mentioned, he came in 10th in points, tied with Bernie Mobbs. So unfortunately, that's very likely going to knock him out of the top 10, meaning he's going to have to try to secure himself a victory throughout the final 2 regular season races if he wants to work his way into the playoffs.
Also shakes up the regular season points battle, because Grant Wesley looks like he will continue on, but he's going to be mired way back in traffic. And possibly off the pace, as he had a lot of rear end damage on that machine. We'll see. Sometimes a driver can get the rear end damage and actually still be competitive as long as they're in the draft. We've seen a number of drivers be able to do that last season and this season, but without a doubt, with only 6 point separation between himself and Joe DeSpirito, who has been up inside of the top 5 for most of the day, his points lead heading to next week very much in jeopardy.
Yeah, that's definitely gonna hurt him. But if there's anybody that we know can bounce back, it would be those guys that are up toward the top of the chart. Grant Wesley, we know he can come out here and win. It's just a matter of getting himself into the position to do so. So I don't know. We'll have to see exactly how bad that car is, because the rear end looked smashed up really bad. It looked like it was shoved up to about the rear window. I don't think he has come in to get that repaired yet. But Seth, I'm not sure that you can be competitive with that car the way it stands right now. And if that crew can't do much more for it, that's going to be a big hurt.
There you see Chris Emery in the 222, who was barrel rolling on the back straightaway under our second caution. He's going to come down pit road, but he is the recipient of the lucky dog. And as we mentioned, with 2 more drivers now out of the race, that's 2 more positions, 2 more points that Chris Emery was able to pick up. Now being on the lead lap, may be able to pick up more. And this is going to turn the race lead over to the 43 of Richard Martin. It's another driver that we kind of talked about at the beginning of the season, how last year did not go his way. He wasn't able to make it into the playoffs and was not able to find victory lane either. He comes into tonight's event 17th in the standings, and you got to note that he's probably one of those drivers seeing Bernie Mobbs and Hank Middleton, drivers near that cut line, run into issues, and he's got to be licking his chops and ready for this opportunity to capitalize.
Absolutely. There's definitely points to be gained, and we've seen how competitive that 222 is. It's just going to be a matter of how fast is his car? Is it up to speed where it needs to be after barrel rolling multiple times down the back straightaway? But we've seen him and his teammate in the 616 work really well on the bottom of the racetrack the last couple weeks. So if he can make up some time, great. But if he can't, it's now just a test of endurance. Can he outlast the rest of the field? Because quite frankly, Seth, 3 tremendously huge crashes that we've seen, and we're not even halfway through the race yet.
It looks like our front row, when we go back green, if they don't dive to pit road here with 1 to go, it would be Richard Martin and Wayne Pribnow. Bob Seminara, who's led 15 of tonight's laps, would be lined up in 3rd. Joe DeSpirito, who's been out in front for 5 laps, would be 4th. Donnie Garrett, who has led 3 laps, would be 5th. Dante Ricky would line up 6th, with Chuck McClure, Rodney Sullivan, Sonny Tallman, and Josh Metallic there in the 10th position. And I believe Josh Metallic is the only former winner from this season that is outside of the top 10. No correction, Billy Elliser also. Metallic is the lowest in the points of the drivers that have won this season, 14th in the standings. And one thing that we have to remember as well, that with the way that the reformatting took place last season, when the playoff grid was put together, the higher you finish in points determines how many bonus points you get when the playoff standings are reformatted. So, obviously Josh Metallic knows that as long as he stays up above that 20th in the standings cut line, he's going to battle for the playoffs. But you got to think that he wants to utilize these final 3 weeks to pick up spots in the standings, gain more bonus points when we get to when the playoff grid is determined and how many bonus points are distributed out.
And so you want to talk about attrition, Seth. If you remember, the 39 of Metallic, he was involved on that lap 4 incident. So the fact that he's been able to rebound back up to 9th as he is now currently being scored is pretty impressive in itself. We also saw the 38 of Rodney Sullins involved in that second incident on the back straightaway when he got up into that outside wall. So, Seth, have we gotten to the point now where we just have cars spread out through the field that have all been involved with wrecks, with the exception of maybe the first 6 or 7 cars on the racetrack?
As I'm looking here, it's very hard to find anybody from 7th place on back that has not been involved in at least one of our 3 incidents here tonight, and a couple of drivers that have continued on that I'm going to be very interested to see if they're up to speed. They were smoking leaving the scene of the accident last time over there in turn 2. Tim Knobsker in the 088 and Cy Jones in the 7. They're still on the lead lap, and they've been able to get those engines somewhat repaired. But usually when a car is trailing black smoke, that car is in no way it doesn't matter how hard the pit crew works on it, there's no way that car is going to be up to full speed.
Absolutely not. You usually pull it into your pit stall, and the pit crew usually tells you to just go ahead and kill the motor because we're done. Unfortunately, that is going to be the case. So Tim Knobsker, he's going to take a tremendous hit in points tonight, Seth. We mentioned he came into tonight 12th in points, 50 out of the point lead, and about 6 points out of the top 10. One of those giant swings, or my mistake. Tim's actually at the back of the pack. I misread the Seth, let's rack them up. Let's get back going and racing because all this time under yellow, I think it's killing us right now, and we're ready to see some action.
No, you're fine. They want you to keep talking. They ended up having another lap of caution here. I think somebody actually blew up at the back of the field, trying to figure out who that driver is. But I'm hearing that someone's engine expired, and with that debris and that oil being laid down the track, we're going to have one extra lap of pacing.
So
might have been the
Richard
00. That might have been the one that blew up.
As you documented before, Seth, it looks like at this time, our standings showing Richard Martin in the lead. Now, we know Demar, a very capable driver. He's had a few really strong showings here the last few weeks. So to see his car up front undamaged, contending with the big dogs at the front of the field, I think you've got to be feeling pretty good if you're him, or if maybe you're Donnie Garrett, if you're Dante Ricky, guys that haven't gotten any wins, and hey, my car is still in good shape in comparison to the cars that are behind me. So let's see if we can't get these Florida boys out of the way and give them a run for their money.
Yeah, I think Dante coming into tonight, obviously there's still 2 races to go, but in all honesty, I almost think he's in a must-win situation here tonight. I think that tonight has to be the night that sets the tone for the upcoming final 2 races of this regular season, because he is, as you mentioned, winless, and he's 27th in points. So he's got 2 things he's got to do. He's got to get himself into the top 20 in the standings, and he's got to find victory lane, because it's very much looking like he's not going to have enough races to point his way in. And one of the things about Talladega, Daytona, if it's a series that runs there week after week, we throw statistics out there from this season, from last season, from seasons past, even from the week prior. But, we can take all these statistics and throw them out the window, because Talladega, the Talladega Challenge Series always varies every race, every week, every month, every season. At this point last year, we had 2 drivers that had multiple wins at this point of last year in season 51. And as you mentioned, 6 for 6 in different winners going to victory lane here this season. And I'm just getting that feeling that we might be seeing a 7th one here tonight, but they might have to work hard to beat the duo of Despirito and Seminara, who so far here in the first 30 laps have kind of set the tone of this race.
Absolutely, and they're both lined up for this restart on the inside line. Flagger with green flag in hand. These guys are going to fire off. Richard Martin with the advantage to the top side with Donnie Garrett right behind him. It looks like Bob Seminara will battle back on that middle line as you see the 712 now with the advantage off of turn number 2 as they head out onto the back straightaway.
Bob Seminara hoping, I think, that the 24 can get clear to move up to the outside line, but Richard Martin, with help from Donnie Garrett, they're going to keep the 24 pinned down, so they may actually separate those 2 drivers from working together. Now Dante Ricky trying to push the 24, get him alongside of his teammate for the top position.
Dante Ricky's trying really hard to push that 24 on the bottom side, but we know the cars behind him have all sustained damage at some point throughout the course of the race. Meanwhile, the top 4 cars on that middle line, they're all clean and green. So those bottom 2, Despirito and Ricky, having to fight just a little harder than everybody else right now on that bottom line, as now it looks like the Despirito machine will have the advantage in between 1 and 2.
Want to clarify that it was Cy Jones' engine that expired under pacing units, that extra lap of caution, and he has now gone to the garage area, finishing 30th here tonight. Several drivers have already lost the draft due to the damage sustained. Chris Emery, who just got back in the lead lap, Jim Black and Tim Knobsker, they are hoping that there's going to be more wrecks taking place ahead of them, hoping more drivers are going to be damaged and off the pace so they can pick up some more positions.
Absolutely, but it doesn't look like right now. It looks like right now the rest of the field is kind of struggling to keep up with that top 7 or top 8. There is a bit of a gap in that bottom line, and it looks like when you look on that high side, once you get behind Chuck McClure, it looks like the 55 of Tallman having just a little bit of difficulty closing the gap up to the rear bumper as McClure as well. So I'm kind of waiting to see what happens because, as we've mentioned, there's been a lot of cars that have been involved in all 3 wrecks so far today. Now we do see Chuck McClure. He's going to try to make a third line. 77 of Garrett. He's going to jump to the outside of Richard Martin at the back of the back straightaway as well.
Saw a car moving up to the middle line, now back to the bottom. That's Jeff Cravello in the 56. Only time we've really mentioned him here tonight. He got a piece of that incident back on lap 5, but now up inside the top 10, and this is another driver that's had a very consistent season, 8th in points coming into this race, and right now making a very good case for himself to be in the playoffs. But that third line, it is flying as Donnie Garrett, Chuck McClure, Sonny Tallman, and others, they have found something, and it's taking them to the front.
And that middle line is in big trouble right now, Seth. The 24 Despirito, the 712 Seminara, and the 43 of Richard Martin, they are going backwards as the outside and inside lines completely consume. Then, as you mentioned, Garrett is up to the lead on that high side with help from McClure. Dante Ricky still leading that bottom line, leading the number 38 of Rodney Sullins. Just as I say that, the 77, 17, and 55 all move down the racetrack. Now Sonny Tallman, he moves to the extreme inside line to try to get a run on the 17 into the tri-oval.
Well, we see Sonny Tallman week after week work with his teammate. Oh, we're 4 wide back here through the tri-oval. What a horrible place to choose to go 4 wide out of every section of the track, the place where the car is the lightest, but now they settle it back out to 3 wide. But as I was saying, Sonny Tallman, week after week, we see him working with Dante Ricky, teammates when they're both running Toyotas. He's now found Dante Ricky, but now he's got to get used to working with a Dodge.
Yeah, and don't look, but on that third line right now, Seth, and they're making progress. The 24 and the 712, they are at the top of the racetrack now. Sonny Tallman now towing the field up at the front, down below that middle line just a little bit. Ricky will follow in tow, but they will go back up, maintaining that lead into the tri-oval.
Donnie Garrett right now in that third position, 25 points ahead of 10th in the standings coming into tonight, but trying to find victory lane for the first time this season. I believe last week I mentioned, I think it was, I want to say September or October. I think it was October of 2019 was the last time that Donnie Garrett found victory lane in a Tally Challenge race, and so you know he is hungry. Almost tasted victory lane last week.
Absolutely, and we've heard him talk. Teammates. He says, I have no teammates, and without teammates, I can't get any help. And Sonny Tallman, man, he dove to that inside line to block the run from the 77 behind him. That's going to bind up the 77 and the 17 just a little bit. Now off of 4, it looks like the 77 going to look high. Tallman now blocking him in the middle lane. So what we're seeing Tallman do looks exactly like what the Cup guys do on these super speedways right now, Seth.
Sonny Tallman's another driver that needs a victory. He's 13 points behind 20th in the standings, but he needs a win for being in the 20th position in the standings to count towards a spot in the playoffs. As you saw, 3 wide mid-pack, making it 4 wide to get around the slower machine of Knobsker. And here comes Chuck McClure. He's got Donnie Garrett. Sonny Tallman, a sitting duck for the moment, as Chevrolets lined up nose to tail in those top 3 spots on the bottom.
Yeah, and I just don't think he could block any more than what he was, but that was something pretty neat that we saw him do. That's not something that we traditionally see guys pull off with success very often, but he did it really well for about a half a lap. That might be something to take into consideration for the remainder of the race, because that could be something real useful once you get to the end. Knowing he can now do that, Sonny Tallman might be thinking to himself, if this is the last lap, can I block those guys enough to get myself into victory lane?
Still 3 wide, 4, 5, maybe 6 rows deep. This is around the 7th position. Still Despirito and Seminara trying to get that extreme outside line going. They've got Wiley Coate and John Godfrey up there with them. You've got last week's winner, Jeremy Jeffries, in the middle with Richard Martin and Dave Melson. And on the bottom, you got Jeff Cravello. And how about Jeff doing a great job there filling in tonight for Bobby Farrell. Right now, unofficially, the 92 running in the 11th position.
And for Joni, giving that number 92 a really strong run on the low side of the racetrack. If he can maintain this, he'll keep himself in good position toward the end of the race to bring that home, possibly top 5, top 10. At the front of the field, Chuck McClure, Donnie Garrett, Rodney Sullen still leading that inside line before you get to your first side-by-side. And it looks like Tallman is still working that middle line with help from the 54 of Dante Ricky. Again, we remind everybody, Dante Ricky not in his traditional number 84 tonight as he fills in for the 54 of Robbie Nice coming off of surgery. But it looks like right now this middle line leading the field off into turn number 3. McClure and Garrett probably making that bottom line work as well as we've seen in multiple points throughout this season, Seth.
They definitely are. That middle line and outside line getting themselves lined up nose to tail. And it just seems like if you can at least keep your car steady and keep those bumpers lined up, inside line, outside line, even the extreme outside line, you are going to make forward progress. 2 of our wrecks so far here tonight have been just the fact that there's been so much dancing going on with these cars on the back straightaway. It's been very difficult for drivers to get their bumpers lined up, and hence we've seen bumper grab come into play. And there's a lot of drivers that I've been looking here and looking at their position in the point standings that very easily here tonight, despite their struggles in the early portion of the season, could, with a win, still find themselves up inside the top 20. We already talked about a couple of drivers like Sonny Tallman and Dante Ricky. Well, Rodney Sullins in the 38 and Dave Melson in the 038. These are a couple of other drivers that, should they win here tonight, they would be up inside the top 20 in the point standings. It would just have to conserve, or not conserve, but preserve that top 20 position for the final 2 weeks.
And don't look now, but Sonny Tallman making another really strong run for the lead up. Almost big trouble at the back of the pack. It looked like Ken Roberts got a little bit sideways. Wiley Coyote with some quick thinking there to stay off his back end. But up at the front of the pack, Sonny Tallman has made the pass on the 17 of McClure. He looks to have that inside clear, but I don't think he's going to go down there as Ricky's still giving him a lot of help in the 54 car.
Staying with Ricky's Dodge, you've got a Ford behind them. Right now it's Toyota, Dodge, Ford, and Chevy on that top line. How democratic all 4 manufacturers right now lined up nose to tail, going up against the inside line, which still being led by Chuck McClure. McClure, as well as Joe DeSpirito. These are a couple of guys, Josh Metallic, Bob Seminary. They're trying to be the first multi-time winner on the season.
Absolutely, and it could very well be done, but Sonny Tallman, Dante Ricky, and Terry Bombard, they want nothing of that right now. Those 3 guys saying, hey, we're making a lot of speed up here at the front of the pack, and they've got help from the 38 of Dave Melson. The 24 of Joe DeSpirito has tucked down from that third line into that middle line behind the 38 of Melson. And Seth, looking at the numbers and where we've been, these guys got to start thinking about green flag pit stops here within probably the next 4 or 5 laps or so.
Yeah, this has kind of been a complete flip reverse of what we're used to seeing as far as a Talladega race. Usually early on in the race, we end up seeing the long green flag runs and the execution on pit road translate into who is going to be in the hunt for the win in the second half of the race. And then usually at that point is where we end up seeing the aggressiveness kick up and the multiple cautions fly. This has been the complete opposite. We started out with 3 yellow flags, all 3 incidents, multi-car incidents, a number of drivers currently out of the race, a number of drivers off the pace, and now it's looking like this could be a Talladega race where it's all going to come down to who executes the best on pit road.
Absolutely. So, like I said, I would have to think would be in the next 4 or 5 laps. Don't look now. Joe DeSpirito, 712, Bob Seminara, they have started making a run on the bottom side of the racetrack. They're looking at the left rear fender of the number 10 car of Terry Bombard through the tri-oval here. Coming out of the tri-oval, still, it looks like Sonny Tallman with a secure lead. Help from the 54 behind him still. And right now, the 3 cars on that inside line, DeSpirito, Seminara, and now the 77 of Garrett, they were making time, but they've kind of stalled out here. So it makes you wonder, are they setting up for a green flag pit stop, or are they trying to make a run at that middle line right now down the backstretch?
Well, we're starting to see a couple more drivers fan down to the inside line. Dave Melson moving down there. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting to figure out if indeed they're moving down there to have the clear access onto pit lane, or if they're just trying to see if they can get that inside line going. I think there's your answer right there, because your top two actually dropped down to the inside line as well, with Sonny Tallman and Dante Ricky. So I think that we are going to be closing in here on when that green flag pit stop comes around. And we have seen so many times this season a caution come out with drivers stacking up, making contact, trying to get onto pit road entries. So we may not be done with seeing yellow flags just yet.
Absolutely not. I wouldn't rule that out whatsoever. But right now, that bottom line, which was originally the middle line, they're making good time around the bottom of the racetrack. Your first side-by-side isn't until you get back to about the 5th position between the 712 of Seminara and the 10 of Terry Bombard. Bombard now getting help from the number 17 of Chuck McClure. They're trying to make some positions up, but can't quite get the momentum going. Right now, Sonny Tallman and Dante Ricky doing a really, really good job at the front of the pack down on that middle line. We do have one car diving off onto pit road. Looks like the 43 of Richard Martin, but it looks like he is coming in on his own. So expecting in the next lap or two, Seth, probably see the rest of the field following suit.
Yeah, remember Richard Martin actually stayed out on the pacing laps after the third caution, since it came out so soon after the second yellow flag. So he is a little bit shorter on fuel than the rest of these drivers. Probably was hoping to have another caution come out to put himself on sequence with everybody else and still maintain track position. That has not been the case, and so he's going to be coming on and off of pit road all by his lonesome. We'll see if he'll still be able to even be up in the lead pack when this whole green flag pit stop cycle completes.
Yeah, and it doesn't look like that's going to do him any favors. We know that he was just trying to kind of hang with the field there, but now coming out, he is exiting pit road. The field will probably pick him up about the exit of turn number 2, so he's going to be a minimum of 1 lap down. If he can catch the draft from these leaders, that will give him a little bit of an advantage, so he doesn't fall too far off the pace. However, if he can't maintain that lead draft, he's probably going to find himself multiple laps down by the end of this race. So we'll have to see how it turns out here. Right now, your leaders, 3 car breakaway on the inside line, 3 cars on the middle line, another 2 cars on the inside line behind them. This kind of looks a little reminiscent of tandem drafting stuff, except, it's 3 cars instead of 2.
I think we got the leaders coming in, because the 24 and 712 jumped up to the top like they were going to go around these guys. No, actually some drivers from the mid-pack area are coming to pit road. The 77 of Donnie Garrett dives down. I don't think anybody really came down with him.
It looked like 4 other cars behind him, but they were at the tail end of the field. I didn't catch the number on those cars, but we know for sure Garrett now get in. Now, we've seen multiple times this season, Seth, another car that likes to pit ahead of the rest of the bulk of the field, the 088 of Tim Knobsker, and it's played to his advantage a couple times, especially when guys wadded up coming into the pits, or if you can get that drafting help and you can get back out up to speed faster than what the leaders are running, you can find yourself at an advantage coming off of pit road too. So we'll have to see how it goes for them.
John Godfrey, Jerm Lewis, Wiley Coate, Chris Emery, Gary Hurst were the others that came down with Donnie Garrett. And we're going to have a spin with Terry Bombard right in front of the field.
More cars spinning through the tri-oval as well.
Caution is out.
The 39 of Metallic, the 38 of Sullins in the tri-oval. Not sure what sparked that off. I saw somebody get into the 10 car. Looked like there may have been just a little bit of a checkup, and maybe the second lane of the racing groove as leaders came down to pit, sending 3 cars spinning, the most obviously being Terry Bombard, who spun, almost hit the inside pit entrance wall, but avoided it. And then the other cars, I think they spun themselves into the tri-oval. It didn't look like anybody took too much damage through that instant, but that is going to bring us to our 4th caution of the day on lap number 50.
I'll tell you what is amazing is the fact that a number of those drivers that were on that inside line coming to pit road, that they didn't get swept up into this. Because if you look here at the replay and the trajectory of the skid marks of the 10 of Terry Bombard, you would almost think he's going to sweep up Dante Ricky and others that were just heading to pit road. It's amazing that he actually spun just in front of them. That could have been really catastrophic for those drivers that were just getting ready to hit pit lane.
You know who's feeling pretty good about this caution, though, Seth, right now? That's
Richard Martin.
Richard Martin. Not only Richard Martin, but that number 77 of Donnie Garrett, who was coming off of pit road as that caution came out. He knows that he's got enough fuel to make it to the end. The rest of the leaders are pitting now. That's effectively going to put Richard Martin and Donnie Garrett in great position. Richard Martin, he'll be able to get back up onto the lead lap. And Donnie Garrett, if this shuffles out the way that we think it's going to, he went from being the first car on pit road to, once we go back to green, probably the leader of this race.
Boy, talk about a timely yellow flag. No doubt there for Donnie Garrett, who is, for the most part here today, been up inside of the top 5, at least the top 10. He's actually been out in front for a few laps here today as well, and do a little bit of a pit road miscue there for the 8 of Jeremy Jeffries missing his stall, as most of your race leaders who have not yet pitted have come down pit road this time.
So our leaders, they're going to come in, get the fuel that they need for the remainder of this race. And it looks like Sonny Tallman still maintaining the advantage over the 77 of Donnie Garrett at this time. So when pit cycle shuffles out here, I'm not exactly sure exactly who's going to be in the lead, because I would have thought that these guys, I didn't realize that these guys had pitted already, Seth, because I didn't think that they had pitted before them. However, it looks like the 54 of Ricky and the 55 of Tallman still out on the racing surface.
Indeed they are. A little surprised about that, because I'm fairly certain, I didn't exactly take a good detailed look of when indeed the caution was thrown, but if the 54 and the 55 had managed to be across the commitment line on pit road prior to the caution coming out, then they would have been able to take service. If they had come down pit road and not hit that commitment line before the caution came out, then they would have had to just drive down pit road, take on no service, or they would have gotten a penalty sending them to the rear of the field. So it's looking like they may have actually pit.
See, the 55, he is down below the yellow line right now. However, the 54 of Ricky still out on the racing surface. So what I'm curious about, Seth, is if maybe the 54 of Ricky was one of those that got shuffled toward the back of the draft before that caution came out and came in behind Garrett, one of those cars that we weren't sure if it was one of them. But had Ricky not pitted, we know for sure he would be short. There would be no way. So at some point, he must have come down and gotten fuel when we missed it somehow. But right now, he still scored in front of the 77 of Donnie Garrett. So
yeah, we're looking at it right here. And actually, the pit road was actually closed. It almost looked like before Harry Bombard got spun out. Either that or the race officials were very quick and on the gun to be able to throw the caution. You can clearly see none of the drivers that were coming to pit road here on this lap, Dante Ricky, Sonny Tallman, Dave Melson, none of them were even close to reaching the commitment line. So I'll take a look and see if indeed the 54 did take service, but he did. He actually came down. He put on 4 tires. Little confused about that one, because if you're not to the commitment line before that caution comes out, you can't take service without having to drop to the rear of the field.
Right, and as I understood it, Seth, and I could be mistaken, even if you were on pit road when that yellow came out, if you hadn't yet made it to your pit stall, you couldn't take service even. So, I'm right with you on that one. I'm kind of confused on exactly what the ruling on that one is. We'll have to wait to see if we hear some sort of an update on that. But whatever way that played out, I always assumed that if the yellow flag came out, you hadn't gotten to your pit box and started service, that you had to proceed through the pits. So at this point, Ricky still scored in front of the 77 of Garrett. I'm not hearing anything about any penalties or black flags. So somehow Dante Ricky, he's now sitting in the catbird seat, catching a little bit of good luck.
Yeah, looked like just about everybody did a pass-through, did not take service, with the exception of the 54. So yeah, we'll have to try and get maybe some clarification on that one. A little bit confusing, but it will be Dante Ricky who will lead us back to green. Looks like we're going to have a few drivers that are ahead of him that will get back onto the lead lap. Ken Roberts, as well as Chris Emery and Richard Martin. They're going to get to take the wave around. I think that the lucky dog position, or the two lucky dog positions under this caution, would be going to the 055 and the 43, I do believe. So while they are taking the wave around here, two of them would have technically been the lucky dogs anyway.
All right, so we will rack the field back up. Drivers getting back double file as the lucky dogs and wave around make their way back around the racetrack. Again, Dante Ricky, now your leader. The 77 of Garrett, he's going to be on the outside of that front row. Jerem Lewis in the 616 restarting fourth. John Godfrey, third, John Godfrey with a solid run, currently running in that fourth position. So when we take the green flag, there will be 13 laps remaining. If any other incidents were to occur, all drivers will be racing back to the caution flag. And we know if we get a caution flag within the last 4 or 5 laps of the race, that's going to end it right there. But Seth, I think it's time, if you're in the middle of the field, or if you're these leaders that are now trapped behind, this traffic that got into pit road in front of you, I would start thinking, hey, I need to move, and I need to move now if we're going to get this race win. So wait time's over. There's no more wait time. It's time to go race.
Yeah, it's go time for two reasons. Number one, these drivers all should be able to make it the rest of the way on what they've got in the tank. And number two, as we kind of hammer home every single week, these drivers, obviously they're racing for that checkered flag at lap 66, but this race could be over as soon as the completion of lap 62, depending on when a caution might fall in the closing stages of this race. And if you look at the first 3 rows, all drivers chasing their first win of the season. You got to go all the way back to row 4 with Joe DeSpirito and Bob Seminara before you find a former winner from this season.
Absolutely. So those first 6 guys, they feel pretty good right now. They work their way slowly to the tri-oval. The Dodge Challenger pace car, it will park at the inside of the racetrack. The green flag is out. Dante Ricky leading them across the line, but the 77 of Garrett, he looked to get a real good restart as he has just about a nose advantage in turns 1 and 2.
Jerem Lewis finished in the 3rd position, I believe it was, about 3 weeks ago. So close to picking up his first win. And how about Wiley Coate in that number 6 machine? He's on that inside line, getting a shove from Joe DeSpirito, trying to push that Dodge to the front of the field.
Well, and if you got anybody pushing you, that the number 24 is not a bad option. It looks like the 9 of Chris Elliott's going to tuck down below him. So that bottom line now making progress as they work to the inner door of the 77 of Garrett off of turn number 4 for the 3rd position.
How about back there as well, the debuting 914 of Gary Hurst. Great performance here tonight as he's making his first start of his career. If he's able to pull off a victory, that might be the ultimate underdog story of the entire series.
Race 1 win, but right now Wiley Coate on the inside of the number 9 the 54 of Dante Ricky off of turn number 2. Wiley, he's going to have the advantage now, side by side down the back straightaway. Ricky will try to battle back, but they are nose to nose, side by side, heading off into turn number 3.
Last year, Dodge had only 1 victory courtesy of Bernie Mobbs. You've got 4, make it 5 Dodges up here in the vicinity trying to go to victory lane. The 6, the 54, the 9, the 90, all with a shot of trying to put Dodge in victory lane for the first time this season.
Absolutely, and Jerem Lewis all over the back end of the 54 of Ricky right now. Coate will lead across the line with 11 laps remaining, still side by side heading off into turns number 1 and 2. About 5 rows deep, we have our first 3 wide. Josh Metallic now battling to the outside of John Godfrey down the back straightaway.
You talked about drivers in the middle of the pack, that it is go time. Josh Metallic, Chuck McClure, Jeremy Jeffries, Dave Melson on that 3rd line. They know that this is the chance they have to work their way from mid-pack to the front, and they gained about 2 car lengths down that back straightaway. That third line is flying, no pun intended, as they're being led by the U.S. Air Force Ford Mustang.
Absolutely. Metallic, if there's anybody that you know can do it, we've seen him win a race already this season. He works really well on that high side, but that middle line, they got to be sweating just a little bit. They're starting to fall apart as the cars on either line, on outside or inside, as they consume that middle line, it just kind of falls apart. And right now, Dante Ricky is about a car length back of the 6 of Cote. He's now side by side with the 24 of Despirito. We'll have to see what Cote does down the back straightaway, but it looks like Ricky now trying to battle back, as does Josh Metallic, 3 wide for the lead into turn number 3.
Dead even, 3 abreast into turn 3. Metallic up top, Ricky in the middle, Wiley Coat on the bottom. They're 3 wide, 6 make it 7 rows deep from front to back of this lead group. Ooh, little out of shape was Jerem Lewis, almost 4 wide. Now they are 4 wide as John Godfrey jumps to the outside of Donnie Garrett. They settle it back out to 3 wide formation through the tri-oval.
And cars still bumping and banging back through the pack. 9 laps remaining across the line, this time by Wiley Coat, still the leader. Dante Ricky and the 616 of Lewis, they are falling back quickly. That middle line, it's gone away. Bye-bye, guys. If you want to get back up front, you better work on it a little bit harder. Right now, Coat at the lead. Josh Metallic now still leading that extreme outside. He is battling for that 3rd spot and possibly 2nd spot into turn number 3 with Joe Despirito.
Wiley Coat 31 points out of 20th in the standings. A win here tonight could certainly put him up in the vicinity to battle for a playoff spot, as we're going to be 4 wide again. McClure leaves Josh Metallic out to dry. He had to be led in by, I think that was Bob Seminara, who in turn had to be given room by the Bernie Moss machine. Still 4 wide as the 39, no friends on that wall line.
No, and I believe the 39 dumped out of that pretty hard. He did not want to be up top 4 wide heading off into turn number 1. Looked like he might have tapped the brake just a little bit to make sure that he wasn't involved in an incident. Now 7.5 laps remaining down the back straightaway. Still 3 wide for that 4th position. The 8 of Jeffries up high, the 54 of Ricky in the middle, and the 9 of Elliott down low. The first 4 cars, they are checking away from this 3 wide. It's Coat, Despirito, McClure, and Seminara. The 9 of Elliott and the 54 of Ricky almost make contact off turn number 4.
I think there was contact between those dodges as the 54 came down a little bit, trying to pinch down Chris Elliott, and Donnie Garrett's going to get up and over off the nose of Bernie Mobbs, back up the track into Rodney Sullins. Caution is going to fly. We will get another restart here as our 4th yellow flag waves.
Yep. Lap number 60, caution number 5. Donnie Garrett, you saw he get turned at a really bad spot, exiting the tri-oval air, tucking up underneath the rear end of that car, lifting it off the ground. Almost big trouble at the entrance of turn number 3. We are still racing back, Seth. There will be 5 laps to go at the line. The leaders had not taken the yellow flag when that came out. Right now, Joe Despirito in the lead heading into the tri-oval.
He used Tim Knobsker as a pick to get around Wiley Coat for the race lead. Seminara went with him. Seminara going to step out of line to try and take the lead. Coming to the caution, can't do it. So the 24 will be getting us back under the green flag, and what could be anywhere from a green-white checker to maybe even a 1-lap shootout here tonight. But Donnie Garrett, who has been so close to victory lane so many times this season, trapped in the middle of a 4-wide situation, coming out of the tri-oval and then up and into the air across the start-finish line, as we'll go back and take a look at a replay of what happened to him in depth.
Yeah, like I said, Seth, that looked like he might have just gotten a little bit of a touch, and once that car was facing the wrong way at 200 miles an hour, it just lifted off, came back, landed on the ground. I'm not sure if it ever did a complete flip, but it did flop from side to side a couple times, probably took pretty substantial damage. Only a couple cars involved in that. It could have been a lot worse than what it ended up being for sure.
That was the hit there with Rodney Sullins, and it looked like maybe a little bit of bumper grab in one of the touchiest areas of the racetrack. Donnie Garrett into the back bumper of Dave Melson as they were on that top side, and then down across the nose of the 90 of Bernie Mobbs. But yeah, with all the carnage we've seen so far in the first 3 yellow flags of this evening, I mean, this one looked relatively tame.
Absolutely. So we see the 77 of Garrett. He is back up to speed, at least under yellow. It looks like he's trying to get a position back that he may have lost. I have a feeling that the yellow flag probably came out for him before he reached the start finish line. Then the yellow came out as he crossed airborne. So it looks like he will be scored in about the 11th position, I believe, across the line right now.
And we had an issue with another driver in the middle of 1 and 2, Jim Black. We're going to focus on him as he was coming into the vicinity of the spinning Donnie Garrett. And watch right here as he does make his way around. All of a sudden, the 86 going to snap loose, and you're going to see that dreaded black smoke come out from underneath his machine. And he has actually taken that car back to the garage area. So a tough break there for Jim Black, a mechanical issue taking place here with about 7 laps to go.
Absolutely. So I'm wondering if maybe there was a bad shift or he hit a shifter and blew it up the way that it snapped and the black smoke came out like this. But Seth, now I got to ask, because I don't think we can overlook the elephant in the room. Donnie Garrett was just in midair on each of his sides, possibly on his roof even. He's still running in that 10th position. Now, assuming he didn't cause that incident, he does not have to come in and do an incident penalty. However, with what's going to look like we're going to have a 1-lap restart here down to the finish, do you think that he stays out and ignores the damage that his car just potentially took to try to stick in that top 10 right now?
I think he definitely does. Whether or not that car is going to be up to speed, we're going to have to wait and see. If it had just been him going airborne, landing back down on the ground like we saw, and no hit afterwards, I would absolutely think that that car is still going to be up to speed and capable of still winning this race. That shot that he took, though, from Rodney Sullins makes me really question whether or not that car is still going to be competitive. I mean, you can see right there on that camera shot how the right side does have that damage sustained from the contact between himself and the 38 car. So, again, when we talked with Donnie last week, though, he said he was always doing math in his head during that run when he was in a pack of 7. I think he's doing math in his head right now. He's calculating, all right, if my car isn't up to speed, how many spots am I possibly going to lose here on this final restart? Where is this going to put me points-wise heading in with 2 races remaining? I mean, as you said, these drivers are constantly calculating that are down around these critical situations of trying to get themselves into the top 10 in the points. And I think Donnie Garrett, the calculator's still working. The gears are still working inside that head of his.
Absolutely. And he came into the night 5th in points, 19 points out of the point lead. So being able to salvage even a 15th to 20th place finish here tonight could play dividends at the end of a couple weeks as we end up our regular season heading into the playoffs. So I think you're right, Seth. I think that's got to be exactly what he's thinking about right now. So we are assuming that we should have a minimum of a 1-lap shootout. However, if something were to happen and delay the restart of this race, it would end under yellow. And you know, what a break that would be for Garrett if the race were to end right now and he were still to be able to maintain a 10th place finish.
One driver that does not want to see this race end under yellow is Grant Wesley, because he is going to be one of the 2 lucky dog drivers along with Tim Knobsker. Now, Knobsker is going to get himself one of his 3 laps back, but this will put the 88 back on the lead lap. And let's say here on this final restart, we have another multi-car incident. Grant could sneak his way through, pick up some positions and points, as he looked like he was destined to finish this race off the lead lap.
Absolutely. And that's that perseverance that we talk about, and being able to make it to the end of the race, because even though it may not seem like much, the more that these incidents happen, the more it kind of breaks up the field. And we thought for sure when we saw him earlier, both drivers, if you remember how badly the 088 was smoking, we thought for sure that car was cooked. It was done. But he's now trying to get himself back up there and get back onto the lead lap. So it just goes to show, if you can stick it out, you can still make up positions, and every point matters, especially at this point of the regular season.
27 drivers look like they will finish out this race. With Wesley back in the lead lap, 26 of them will be on the same lap as leader Joe DeSpirito. DeSpirito and Seminara, they set the pace early on in this one. They got broken up around the midway portion of this race, but they found each other again when it mattered the most. They're going to control this final restart, which will be a green-white checkered as the lights are out atop the pace car. Dante Ricky lines up in third, Jeremy Jeffries in fourth, Wiley Coate in fifth, and the rest of the top 10, Chuck McClure, Dave Melson, Chris Elliott, Jerm Lewis, and Donnie Garrett. We'll run through the rest of the drivers that still could be in the hunt for this, depending on what happens in these final 2 laps, as it's Bernie Mobbs in 11th place, Wayne Pribnow 12th, Sonny Tallman, Jeff Cravello, and John Godfrey, the top 15, Richard Martin in 16th, Doug Woolley 17th, Josh Metallic, John Fragoni, and Billy Ellis are your top 20, and then the rest of the drivers on the lead lap, Gary Hurst, Chris Emery, Ken Roberts, Glenn Harris, Rodney Sullins, and now Grant Wesley. So these 2 teammates control the restart here, Zach, with the 24 and the 712. Again, we saw a third line generate on that last run, and they made progress. Are they going to have to do that again to counter the 24 and the 712 getting hooked up and controlling these final 2 laps?
Well, something that we've seen these 2 teammates do pretty masterfully throughout the last season and a half, especially, is when they control that front row on the restarts or a start of the initial race, they know how to get tucked up in front of and or behind each other. So I think if you're the 54 of Ricky or the 8 of Jeffries right now, you know that you got to try to keep those 2 drivers from teaming up together. And those are some really fast race cars. The 54 of Ricky, the 8 of Jeffries, you've got the 6 of Coate there, the 17 of McClure. And I think realistically speaking, if you want to keep either one of these 2 drivers from making it to victory lane, those guys all got to team up and work together here on these last 2 laps.
Been a long time here since we've had a race end under caution. Let's see if they can keep these 2 final laps clean and green, as Despirito and Seminara, they're looking to be the first multi-time winner on the season. Dante Ricky looking for his first top 3 finish on the year as he lines up behind them. Green flag in the air. The push is on the top side with Jeffries and McClure.
Absolutely, and the 8 all over the back bumper of the 712 of Seminara. It looks like that middle line just almost had the advantage heading off into turns 1 and 2. Now Despirito with about a half car length advantage on the 712 of Seminara. Despirito thought about moving up the racetrack, but just not quite enough room. The 54 of Ricky wiggling side by side down the middle of the back straightaway.
Seminara gonna get pushed to the front with Jeffries and McClure on that outside line. The teammates dead even going into turn 3. We'll see if a third lane forms. There it is. Richard Martin, Josh Metallic back there, just outside of the top 10. Let's see if anybody else here at the front jumps up there with them.
Into the trioval. It's now Seminara at the advantage. The 8 of Jeffries gave him a good push coming across the line for the white flag. That middle line being led by Seminara, still having a little bit of an edge heading off into turns number 1 and 2. We'll have to see if anybody's going to jump out here. I have a feeling if it's going to happen, it's going to be off turn 2 on the back straightaway.
When Jeffries won last week, he jumped to the third lane and led
Trouble.
into turn 3. They're going to wreck with Chuck McClure and Dave Melson. About 5, 6, 7 cars going to break away here to settle it out for this win.
We'll look back at that in a moment, but right now, Joe Despirito, he is going to have the advantage in turn number 3 with the push from the 54 of Dante Ricky. Coming off of turn number 4, the front 2, they have broken away. Ricky working all over the back bumper of the 24 of Despirito. They almost make contact coming into the trioval here, but it looks like Despirito out of the trioval will pick up the checkered flag for the second time this season. Our first repeat winner here in season number 52.
Joe Despirito came into this season the defending champion, and here tonight in one fell swoop, he's not only going to be the first multi-time winner on the year, but he's going to jump to the top of the point standings, a position we were very familiar in seeing him in all of last season, as Joe Despirito continues to make the statement here that if you're going to take last year's championship away from me this year, you're going to have to bring your best.
And we know that Despirito already has 2 in a row. He is looking for his 3rd consecutive Tally Challenge championship this season. I don't think it's any secret that he's going to be making a major run for that, as this is a statement win here tonight. Again, our first repeat winner. He came into tonight second place in points. He will definitely bypass the 88 of Grant Wesley. And for the second season in a row, Seth, heading toward the closing stages of the regular season, Joe DeSpirito, he is now sitting in the catbird seat once again.
Looks like maybe some more bumper grab, bringing out the caution coming to the checkered flag. I think that was Germ Lewis that got into the back of the 038 of Dave Melson, sent him up the track, and then just cars not wanting to lift. They see a wreck ahead of them. They see positions to pick up. Chris Emery, Ken Roberts, Josh Metallic, Bernie Mobbs, Donnie Garrett, Gary Hurst, and others all collected up in that one. There's the 88 of Grant Wesley. What's been a dismal day for him ends with that car smoking across the start-finish line.
Three guys that are feeling pretty good right now are the guys that we're going to talk to very shortly. Seth, we saw a lot of really big incidents today, take a lot of cars out of contention, and when it comes right down to it, we thought maybe we would get that seventh different winner, but if there was ever going to be somebody that would break that up, I would say it would most definitely be the 24 of DeSpirito, and that's exactly what him and teammate Bob Seminara did here tonight.
And I think now that we're heading into our final two races of the regular season, we're going to see a lot more of this. I think a big thing that has really contributed to really the wrecks that we saw here tonight, the one thing that we mentioned most with those cautions was bumper grab. These drivers have figured out that if they're going to get that inside line moving, that third line moving, they have to literally shove each other down these straightaways. They have to have those bumpers locked up. And that leads to the possibility that bumper grab is going to come into play. And unfortunately as well, usually a lot of those pushes happen towards the front of the field. That's where those wrecks take place. And that's why they involve so many drivers.
Absolutely. And we saw nothing. It felt like nothing but big wrecks tonight. I think the only one that, wasn't a big multi-car incident was one that we still saw a car go up and airborne at the start finish line, being the number 77 of Donnie Garrett. Now, Donnie Garrett might have been able to preserve that top 10 finish had he not also been swept up on that incident in the middle of the back straightaway. But Seth, in a season where we've seen a lot of our major incidents happen in the tri-oval, tonight the back straightaway was just absolute calamity.
Definitely was. We saw, I think, 3 at least big wrecks take place there on that back straightaway, including this wreck that theoretically ended this race under the caution flag, albeit on the final lap. As we look at our finishing results here, Joe DeSpirito is going to stand alone as the number 1 seed right now with 2 victories, as opposed to the other 5 drivers that have gone to victory lane a total of once here this season. But how about Dante Ricky filling in the driving duties for Robbie Nices tonight and puts that Dodge in second place? And this is the run Dante needed. He didn't win, but he definitely needed this run to at least get himself up there into the top 20, so that way if he wins in the next 2 weeks, he's got himself a shot of getting into back-to-back seasons of the playoffs.
Absolutely, and we know Ricky is more than capable of winning. He did it a couple times last season in convincing fashion, so we know that he is capable of winning with 2 opportunities to do so. He will definitely be trying to do that. That way he can make his name into the playoff grid. But, I think we're going to see a pretty big shakeup in the points, Seth. I don't think they've refreshed quite yet, but I think it might be kind of staggering what we're going to see after tonight's race. Again, a lot of really big name drivers and drivers that were up toward the top of the point standings coming into tonight's race, having just not very good nights whatsoever, finishing down toward the bottom. And as we've talked about many of the last few weeks, point swings. That has been a huge storyline here, and one that, quite frankly, I don't think that we expected coming into season 52.
Yeah, definitely not. And I think a big reason why we're seeing a lot of these point swings are the high number of cars that we see in these races week after week. A bad night is going to drop you, even this late in the season, anywhere from 4 to 5 spots in the standings, where we're normally used to seeing maybe 1 or 2 spots lost if you have a bad run. But this is a super speedway, and a lot of times an end of your day early is going to lose you multiple positions, not only on the track, but also translated over into the point standings. A couple of drivers that are former winners this season already locked into the playoffs. We talk about momentum heading down the home stretch into the playoffs. Bob Seminara in third. We'll be talking to him momentarily. Jeremy Jeffries, last week's winner, follows up his win with a fourth place run. And two drivers up here inside of the top 10 that we got to highlight. Chris Elliott in sixth and Richard Martin in eighth. The reason for that, both of them actually gained 4 spots in the standings after tonight's race. They move up to 12th and 13th. So look for two of them to be ones to possibly snipe some last-minute playoff positions in 2 weeks' time.
And they'll absolutely be looking to do so. So Grant Wesley, who came in with a 6-point advantage, now currently tied for third, 22 points back with Bob Seminara. So Grant Wesley, we know he's still in a pretty good position. He's got about a 35-point gap between himself and 10th in points. So now we talk about these big point swings. If he has a couple more bad weeks, that could hypothetically knock him outside the top 10. But I don't think the 88 of Wesley, one of those drivers that we necessarily expect to see not make the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. And the points have definitely closed up as well with everything we saw take place in tonight's race. If you go from 8th place Chris Emery down to 16th place Tim Knobsker, that's only 30 points. That's less than a full field separating those drivers right around that 10th in the standings cut line. So things are going to get really interesting in the next 2 weeks as we'll be beginning to put the pieces together as to who's in and who is not in terms of the playoff field. As now let's go down trackside and talk with some of our top 3 finishers. Let's kick things off with the driver of the 712, Bob Seminara. Hey Bob, it's Zach and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
What's up, guys?
Well, man, it kind of looked like the race to the start finish line that decided this race wasn't coming to the checkered flag. Looked like it was really coming to that final caution flag there. We saw you guys kind of use that slower machine as a pick, make your move on Wiley Coat, and then control that final restart. But I know that you guys all season long and last season, you have this system where you guys will try and get one just out ahead of the other and get yourselves lined up. Looked like everybody behind you have kind of caught on to that strategy, and they've had a bit of a counter against that, keeping you guys side by side.
Oh yeah, there was a lot of moving going on there. Yeah, we knew racing back there that was a critical thing. But I mean, lap I don't know, what was it, 58, and when there was a third lane, and then we went up to the middle, and the high tried to come down. It was real close there. A couple of close calls.
One thing that we constantly hear is, we got to break up these Florida guys. And it looked like that was actually the case around the midway portion of the race. And then all of a sudden, we see you guys hook up. We see you guys work your way back up to the front. How were you guys able to see the lanes that are moving, be able to work your way up to the front so quickly and yet so methodically?
Yeah, I don't know, just experience. I mean, we were stuck back there like 9th and 10th, and just saying we got to get around some of these cars, and we were running out of time. So, and it was hard to pass. So, yeah, it wasn't easy. We're just picking the right moments. And I went low when normally I would have stayed middle because I didn't like the group that was there. And then the third lane came in and helped us out on the bottom, and we got a little bit of room to work with.
Bob Seminara, Zach up here in the booth. Hey, man, congratulations on a good third place finish. So we heard you mention just a second ago there that, there was a lot of 3-wide racing. It was really hard to pass. Now, something that I've mentioned to Seth over the last couple weeks is we've noticed with the bottom line finally coming into play a little bit more the last couple weeks, it seems like when that top and bottom line can kind of converge on that last car in the middle line, it seems like that middle line starts to fall apart pretty quickly. Have any other drivers really taken notice of that at this point?
I think so. Yeah, it pinches you off, and then guys have, one guy fades off, and that's it. You're hung out up there, and it just kills the speed. But, those guys and then the third lane, they could come down, and then it's like how many guys come down to see how far back you fall. And that's kind of what happened to me there for a while. Got stuck in the middle, but it's all about when it happens. If you have time to rebound, what guys are in what lanes, that bottom lane can be fast. You got aggressive guys down there. So it all matters.
So I've got to ask you, because we've seen the last season and a half or so, that middle line being that dominant fast line. Now that drivers have kind of wisened up to, we've kind of figured out how to break that middle line up a little bit. How does that change your mentality when you're running up front in that middle line where it's been so fast? What does that make you do a little bit more differently? Does that put you a little bit more on edge and make you have to pay a little bit more attention to those runs that are being generated behind you?
Yeah, definitely. You're looking in the mirror. You're looking to see who's back there, and you kind of know their intentions or what they're going to try to do to you, and not go where you go. So it's okay. That's what we're watching, and we're just trying to just learn as we go, and what we've already learned, we're trying to put that in. Yeah, these guys are coming up from behind, and it's real racy, and it's fun as hell. Really fun.
Great to hear, Bob. Again, congratulations. Solid third place finish. Thank you. Shout out sponsors. What do you got for us tonight?
Yeah, I'd like to thank RTG, Terry, and Prime, and David, and you guys, FRN. Appreciate it. It's so cool. I know we gave you some good green laps there. My bro, Wayne, up in Connecticut, and Dusty, and my brother, North Carolina, and the D's at work. They're all watching. So we got a lot of guys, and they're enjoying it too. Mobs Motors, Joe and Bernie, and thanks everybody to Clean Racing.
That's Bob Seminara getting closer to the end of the regular season, and he finishes third place here tonight at Talladega. Congrats on a great run there, Bob. A lot of momentum continues to stay on the side of your 712, and maybe we'll talk to you in Victory Lane as the second repeat winner of the season next week.
Hope so. Thank you.
And let's see if we can go and get our second place finisher, Dante Ricky. Hey, Dante, it's Zach and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Hey, Seth. Hey, Zach.
Well, I got to ask you, Dante. We've seen all the tough luck that you've endured here in the first 6 races of the season. Then you come out here in a super sub role in a Dodge, and you finish up in the second position. Any thoughts about running a Dodge for the rest of the season?
We might as well drive this 54 car for every race from now to the finish. And I'll tell you what, I needed something for my luck to change, and I gave it 100% tonight, I'll tell you.
Now, we know that last season you ended up being the driver that won the season opener, so you knew you were going to have yourself locked in the playoffs no matter what, but you followed it up with a win in the regular season finale as well. Do you see yourself possibly being able to point your way up there inside of the top 10, or are you going to be heading to these final 2 races with the must-win mentality?
From here to the end of the regular season, this is a must-win mentality, and I gave it my best effort tonight to try and do that, but we just came up a little bit short. But regardless, these race wins are the hardest and most challenging, and the most prestigious races to win, I think, in our Rolling Thunder Gaming League and community. And we're going to need to win a race at some point here before we want to have any chance of making the chase. But even if that does not happen, we've done everything we could tonight to get in a position where we could try to battle for the lead and be up front. Even it starts with that amazing qualifying effort tonight. I know it's not the best time in a qualifying effort, but this 54 car qualified in 4th place on the field, which was my best effort on the season, maybe even let alone a long time at Talladega. And being up front, I think, was a major key to success to avoid most of the accidents and stay out of trouble. In fact, I believe I only had really one accident to avoid, and that was the second caution there on the back straightaway. The other thing, it was just really fun to be able to work with Sonny Tallman tonight. My still teammate in that number 55 subway car, he got up to the lead, and that was his first time leading a race for several laps, and he did an amazing job. I gave him a lot of pointers and tips on how to get in position and where to be and run the middle of the track, controlling the middle at times, and when to defend the bottom. So I really went over a lot of things with him during the race to help him in that position. But unfortunately, when we came to the green flag pit stop, he sputtered a little bit. His fuel was lower than mine. Had I known, I probably would have brought us in the lap earlier. But I got very lucky there too. I was the last car, one of the last cars to legally make it into pit road before the pit road became closed when the yellow came out. We made it in there, had no issue or concern, and took a 4-tire stop there and came out as the leader for that restart. And that was also a key to success, having a little bit of luck on the pit road. The final pit stop or the final run to the finish there, Last 2 laps was very competitive and very crazy. I played a little bit conservative myself on that restart just to make sure that I would have a shot of maintaining my spot in the top 5 because I knew that if I had gotten just too much or not enough of a start, I would have gone to the back based on the way the numbers and the lines were and the cars around. It was very competitive tonight. There were a lot of right from the beginning at the green flag, there were a lot of people trying to get in a certain lane of the racetrack and really fight to defend their position and line they're in, which they should. That's racing, and that's what makes this league so exciting.
Hey Dante, it's Zach. It's great to see. It's great to see you finish in second place tonight, especially in that number 54 car running for Robbie Nices, who's out with surgery. So I've got to ask you. You did mention about running with the 55 of Sonny Tallman, and we saw Sonny Tallman do something for about a lap or about a half a lap there, where he did a really sort of masterful job, kind of manipulating the inside line and the middle line and
Yes.
blocking those runs that were coming around him. That's something that we don't traditionally see very much in this series, but for a kid who just got up there and led his first laps tonight, was that something that you guys had kind of worked on before, or was that one of those sort of things that Sonny Tallman kind of pulled out on everybody and said, hey guys, you might want to watch this because if you pay enough attention to it, it could be advantageous to you later?
Looking back at the big move he made from third position on the top middle off of turn 4, he himself told me, you know what, let me know if I can move down the bottom. And at that point, it was not a 3 wide situation, but there was a big gap between rows 2 and 3. And he told me, Dante, I'm going to move down to the bottom. And he made that move. And I was on the bottom. I was able to push up to him. And I think about a lap later, within that lap, I was able to help him get back up to the middle and top. And Sonny did an amazing job to lead those laps and get in that position. And right place, right time for me to find him. And moving forward, I'm really happy and comfortable with our ability to work still as teammates. And he's an amazing friend to have and a great teammate.
Now, does that give you a little bit of more confidence going into the next few races or so, knowing that, hey, I have a teammate that I can work with? And now, not only does this help your confidence, but this also tremendously helps your teammates' confidence. And, when you can get both of you guys up at the front of the pack, does that kind of make you feel like it puts you in a little bit better position to compete together and maybe get up there and break up some of these 2-3 car teams that we see, really working really well together week in and week out?
Definitely. And, just having a teammate with you in the pack can be used a lot of ways to your advantage. And, as we saw at the end of this race today, the teammates and who you have and who it really does impact a lot of who can win the race and who's in a position to even have a shot to win the race and whatnot. But to me, the ultimate goal is to have the race come down just to me and my teammate Sonny and see which one of us could get out in front. I think that there's still always going to be a little bit of competition between you and your teammates, but having your teammate with you in the pack in the right place at the right time, that is a tremendous advantage. Absolutely.
All right, great to hear, Dante. Great to talk to you as always, my guy. Any shout outs, thank you, sponsors? What do you got for us tonight?
Absolutely. First and foremost, a big shout out to Robbie Nices. Thank you for letting me drive your race car tonight, and I gave it my complete best effort to go out there and try to win this race for you. And I'm sorry I came up a little bit short, but hey, my thoughts are with you. I know you were in surgery today, and I heard that you're doing pretty well, and just hoping all is well through tonight. And really pleased and happy to have that opportunity to drive your race car and do the best I could. And the old Dodge second place finish. That's my best finish, ties the best finish on the season, and really pleased to have that opportunity to drive that tonight. So big thank you to Robbie. Also, thank you to my family and friends, and everyone who is always a member of RTG and doing the absolute best they can and making this place the place that it is.
Well, as we know that Robbie Nices is recovering, he was tuned in tonight watching you pilot the number 54. I actually got a memo from him after the race. He said, I'm very proud of the don't give up attitude and the great finish of Dante. The Dodge dealer's challenger had an ace in the seat, and the finish showed. So well done, a job well done there, Dante. Great finish for you here tonight. And this puts you in a position where we could maybe see in the next 2 weeks win your way into the playoffs. We'll look forward to seeing you try and do that.
Thanks, Seth. Thanks, Zach. Good broadcast tonight. Outstanding work and very good win there to Joe tonight on the race. So thank you, guys.
And we're now going to go down to Victory Lane to talk with Joe DeSpirito. Just to touch there real quickly there on Dante Ricky. He gained 5 spots in the standings with his second place run, 22nd in points, and only a mere 5 points behind 20th in the standings. So no doubt a win in the next 2 weeks would put him into a playoff position. A driver we already know is locked into the playoffs, and he could very well be reaping in the max bonus points in 2 weeks. That's Joe DeSpirito. Hey, Joe, it's Zach and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Yes, I do. How you guys doing?
We're doing great, and man, it took a little bit of time to get ourselves a repeat winner, but no surprise, the defending champ's the one that sets the bar up there as you bring it home for the second time this season in Victory Lane, and subsequently take the points lead over as well with 2 races remaining. But I want to go back to that final restart because we saw you and your teammate in the 712 of Seminara able to really control the way that the draft was working early on in this race. Then you guys got broken up, then you got back together there on that final restart. So how difficult is it to be able to formulate a strategy to try and keep everybody else at bay while at the same time trying to make sure at least one of you is going to get to Victory Lane?
Yeah, it's all about reading the lanes, and we've been working on that since we started here about 4 or 5 years ago. Just reading lanes, reading guys who push, knowing who's strong, knowing who's not a good pusher, and you just kind of look at your F2 and see who's coming, see which lane's coming. You just gotta. It's all about reading and anticipating, and we've been working good at that, and it's been to our success these past 3-4 seasons. So.
When we were talking during the race, Zach was commenting on if there's someone you want behind you pushing you, it's that 24 car. And one thing that we saw here tonight with all of those multi-car incidents was most of them were attributed to bumper grab. Drivers really pushing each other and making that slight little bit of movement that led to the wrecks towards the front, involving quite a good number of the drivers in the field. Obviously you've had the opportunity to be able to push drivers to the front of the field. Is it getting to the point now where drivers are realizing you really have to shove to get the inside and the extreme outside line going against that middle line?
Yes, the middle line it's going to be the fast lane, and you do have to push hard on the bottom to keep it going. But there's an art to it. I got spun about 3 weeks ago because we were pushing too hard on the inside because the guys in the middle were just fast, good pushers. So you got to be careful with pushing on the inside and the third lane too. That can cause incidents. So like I said, you just got to pick your lanes, and if that inside line is slow, maybe you got to fall to the back and work your way back up. It just sometimes it depends on the luck of the draw, who's behind you on restarts, if you have good pushers or not. It all depends. There's a lot of luck involved too.
Hey, Joe, it's Zach. Congratulations on win number 2 of the season. I said to Seth earlier that you were looking to potentially get your 3rd consecutive championship. No jinxes here, because I know you love it when I say things like that, but even when I do it, you still manage to go out and get it anyway. But you mentioned with those 3 lanes, something that I also talked to your teammate Bob Seminara about. It looks like guys have kind of wisened up to the fact that you can break up that middle lane as fast as it's been the last season and a half by getting that upper and bottom lane and just kind of overtaking that last car in that middle line one by one. I think we saw it even happen to you at one point tonight, where you just got kind of sucked back into that sucker hole and then methodically worked your way back up through the field. Now, is that something that you think a lot of these guys are kind of taking notice of? And is that something that, guys are starting to think, okay, maybe that middle line isn't quite as impervious as what we thought it was?
Yeah, I mean, you just got to read the lines, like I'm saying. The middle line is the fast lane, and it just depends who's the pusher behind you. Bob's a great pusher. Bernie's a great pusher. You got a lot of great pushers around here, and sometimes you got to be patient. If you're stuck in the middle lane and that third lane's up there and that bottom lane's under you, and they got more numbers, sometimes you just got to wait it out. There's a lot of patience involved too. People get a little bit antsy, and they want to jump to the third lane and try to get all the way to the front. And, it's only going to get you so far sometimes. And sometimes you just got to log laps and wait, and then that third lane will die, and then you make your way up again. So there's patience involved, and a lot of people don't have that here, and that costs them sometimes. So it's an art, man. There's an art to a lot of it here. So give credit to a lot of these guys here that are up there with me every week. There's a lot of skill involved.
A lot of skill. You certainly seem to have it, sir. Now, as we mentioned, going after championship number 3. So last season, we saw you go the entirety of the regular season before you were finally able to pull a victory off in the playoffs. So you've got 2 on the season. You know that's going to pay you huge bonus points, probably give you a bit bigger of a bonus than what you had, assuming that you can maintain that number 1 spot. But as Seth and I have been talking about the last few weeks, huge point swings with the size of these fields. How comfortable are you feeling that these last couple races you can maintain those top 5, top 10 finishes? Because we've seen a lot of guys take huge point swings, go from 5th all the way back to 10th, 15 in points, because when you're losing a lot of position on the racetrack, it hurts you in the points as well. Are you comfortable feeling as though you can maybe get another one of those wins or stay out of trouble?
It's highs and lows, and you just gotta try to stay right in the middle. I won that race. Was it 3, 4, 5 weeks back, whatever it was, and it's kind of a bit of a low point after that. It's just kind of ups and downs, and if it's a down week next week, it is what it is, and I just gotta wait it out to the playoffs and try to peak there. I've been saying that about peaks too. It's if you peak at the right time, that's where you win. And I do have a little bit of a bonus this year compared to last year. I didn't have any wins in the regular season last year, so it is cool to have those bonus points. But yeah, things swing very fast here. 2 weeks ago, Bob was the points leader. He wrecked, and he lost a lot of points. Grant was the points leader going into this race, and he wrecked out, and he moved back in the points. So hoping that doesn't happen to me next week. But everything can happen so fast in a blink of an eye on these super speedways. So you just got to try to stay out of trouble and try to stay at the front as much as possible. That's where the wrecks are the least likely to happen. So that's what I'm going to try to do. Lead as many laps as I can and stay out of trouble.
Staying up the front as much as possible, not something that you seem to struggle to do, sure. Thank you. Shout out sponsors. What do you got for us tonight?
I got a shout out APW Racing, Mobs Motors. I want to give a shout out to Bernie Mobs. He's A1 painter in this league here. He's painted, I'm guessing, probably at least half or more of the field, and he's painted all my cars, and every little detail I asked for, he's spot on with it. So I got to give a shout out to him. Like I said, my boys Bob and Bernie. I got to give a shout out to RTG. Shout out to Josh, putting a great league on, great series on Thursday nights. Just give a shout out to my sponsors, TravisLutherArt.com, and shout out to you guys, FRN, putting on a great show every week. We love watching it the next day. So thanks, guys. Have a good night.
That's Joe DeSpirito, first multi-time winner in Season 52 for the RTG Talladega Challenge, and subsequently takes the points lead into next week's race. Congrats there, Joe. We look forward to seeing what kind of momentum you can carry heading towards the playoffs here down the home stretch of the regular season.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, buddy.
2 races left until we determine not only the 10 drivers points-wise that are going to get into the playoffs, but also any former winners from the season that might be outside of the top 10 in points, provided they're in the top 20 in the standings. And I was kind of working the calculator here during these post-race interviews, Zach. In theory, with these next 2 races, if we continue to have the 30-plus car fields, there's a possibility that you could gain as many as 60 points in the course of these next 2 races. That would mean that anybody down through the 25th position could still point their way into the top 10. On the flip side, that still means that anybody that currently is inside the top 10 in points that doesn't have a victory, they could fall outside of the top 10 in the next 2 weeks.
Absolutely, and that's where a bit of the drama does come into play, doesn't it? We know Grant Wesley took a huge hit in points tonight. He is currently sitting in 3rd place in points. Donnie Garrett, who's sitting in 6th place. Jeff Cravello sitting in 7th place. Chris Emery, Jerem Lewis, Billy Elliser, or Chris Emery, Jerem Lewis, I apologize. Billy Elliser has gotten a win this season, but that leaves at least half of your top 10 at risk if you were to have a couple bad races in a row. of falling out of playoff contention altogether. Now, it's not unheard of for something like that to happen. However, it would be a bit extreme. But, like you said, that gives a lot of opportunity for some guys to still have some hope that are down through that top 25, especially if you can get yourself a win and get into that top 20. And I wouldn't be surprised if coming into next week, we see some guys really, really trying to make some moves toward that, because once you get to race number 9, it's probably just a little bit too late. But Seth, what this does also is this kind of sets us up for a lot of guys to still be able to point their way in to the top 10, because we know that there are drivers, those that we just mentioned, that haven't gotten themselves any wins, to others still secured in. So drivers still, like you said, down through the top 25, if they can get those points and make something work and make a little bit of magic happen, their hopes and dreams are not quite done quite yet.
Now, here's the thing. Joe DeSpirito reminded me of something that I actually had forgotten, that 2 races ago, Bob Seminara came into that race the points leader. He got involved in a wreck, lost the points lead. Coming into tonight, Grant Wesley was the points leader. He got involved in a wreck, lost the points lead. So, it's points been proven. It doesn't matter where you are in the point standings. Nobody is safe once you take the green flag at Talladega. These drivers that we're talking about that have the potentiality to point their way in, there's no guarantee they're going to be at the end of this race up there in the hunt for the victory in the next 2 weeks. So how far down the list do you think we go of drivers that may actually have to head into these final 2 races in a must-win mentality?
I mean, if we're going to be completely honest about it, Seth, I think if you're anywhere outside of the top 10 in points without a victory, I think at that point, I think with just 2 races remaining, you are in a must-win mentality, because you know how quickly things can change out on the racetrack, and these big point swings, which once again we keep talking about, can happen. If you don't have yourself one of those victories, you have absolutely no insurance at this point.
It is going to be a lot of fun to try and figure out who's in, who's out in the next 2 weeks, to try and calculate who are going to be the drivers to battle it out for the championship. As things stand right now, 11 drivers would be playoff contenders, as Josh Metallic is the only former winner currently outside of the top 10, but that could change in the next 2 weeks as well. Really looking forward to going down the home stretch to determining who our championship competitors are going to be, but definitely looking like Joe DeSpirito has thoughts about going 3 in a row and hoisting that championship trophy. Great one here tonight. A little chaotic to start with, but certainly led up to a lot of different scenarios heading to next week. Zach, appreciate you joining me in the booth tonight.
Seth, as always, thank you. Thank everybody back at Flatout Racing Network that does all the hard work in getting all this stuff set up and organized. Appreciate all the owners, admins, drivers, friends of RTG and its affiliate series. And of course, you at home, the race fans. Look forward to getting these last 2 races of the regular season in, and we will talk to you next week.
Next week, race 8, the penultimate race of the regular season. The race that's going to set the stage for who our championship competitors are going to be. Green flag's going to fly next Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Be sure to join us here for that. For Zach Fremont, I'm Seth Cole. Enjoy the rest of your evening as you've been watching another broadcast courtesy of the Flatout Racing Network.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of Flatout Racing Network and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Flatout Racing Network and iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations. Flatout Racing Network would like to thank you for your support